The more you study the science of attraction, the more you're going to realize there are levels to this. And probably the highest level of game is the level of getting the girl to chase you. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. But before I do, I have two very serious warnings. Number one, these are very powerful techniques. So I'm going to encourage you to use them for good rather than for evil. These can be used to create incredible, healthy, amazing relationships or to create really toxic situations. I recommend you do the former. Secondly, be careful what you wish for. Once you get a girl obsessed, she may stick around longer than you would like, and she may not want to leave your life when you want her to leave your life. That's why the top tier of this list is actually called dangerous or fatal attraction, okay? So you are forewarned. With that said, let's get into the techniques. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm about to go through a series of behaviors that men engage in that are designed to get a woman to chase them or become obsessed with them. And I'm going to go through exactly how effective or ineffective those behaviors may be. In doing this, I'm going to use a tier list. And here are the categories of the tier list. The top tier category is what I will call dangerous or fatal attraction. So very, very strong obsession, but maybe more than you might even want. The second tier is going to be soulmates. This is entirely healthy, positive, but also very, very strong. The next category I'm going to label as she's intrigued / you're getting laid tonight. These are less powerful in some cases than the higher tiers, or in some cases they may actually be quite powerful, but they may just be things that occur earlier on in the interaction, so they have to do with more the first date or pre-sex type behaviors. The next tier down we have she's bored. It is not working. It is not getting her obsessed. It is not getting her to chase. And the final bottom tier is it's actually going to lead to getting rejected. And there's kind of an interesting symmetry which we'll explore where the top and bottom tiers actually kind of become similar in a way. It's almost not a linear scale, but a circular scale. But anyway, we'll talk about that more towards the end. The first behavior I want to talk about is being protective. And by the way, this is not the same as being jealous and needy. We're going to talk about that one a bit later. But being protective actually has strong evolutionary roots to why it is attractive to women. On the savannas of Africa, when our lives were very, very dangerous, having a man that would stand up and protect a woman was actually very valuable to her life and the lives of her offspring. And so this is a deeply rooted attraction characteristic in men. This is in part why certain sort of dangerous types like gangsters, prisoners, fighters, those types of guys often have unusually attractive girlfriends. It's because the women feel like this is a guy who no one would fuck with, and so if he is a little bit of a protector, it makes them feel extra safe. This protector behavior can exhibit in many ways. It can be things as little as leading a girl through a crowd and kind of protecting her from getting bumped and jostled. It can be standing up for her, ideally in a calm and strong but not hysterical way when there is some sort of conflict or tension going on. Those types of things are very, very powerful. And I'm going to list this as A tier or soulmates level behavior because this is entirely positive behavior towards the woman. It's not toxic in any way, but it is actually very, very strong. This is the kind of thing, if the girl already likes you, very important. If you start being overprotective of a girl who doesn't like you yet, or of a girl who wants you to go away, that's not going to work very well. But if the girl already likes you a bit, being protective of her in a strong, non-hysterical, leading kind of way can really amp up that attraction. Next behavior I want to talk about is being mysterious or physically unavailable. And this is the equivalent to having a little bit of a takeaway. Not being there all the time, not being ever present, not being at the girl's beck and call. And in a way, you could look at this as the opposite of being needy or pushy, which are very, very negative behaviors. These are also unusual behaviors to see in men around women they're attracted to because usually men are the pursuers, so these also strongly make you stand out. These are actually incredibly powerful techniques. However, I'm only going to put them in the she's intrigued, you're getting laid place in the chart for the simple reason that this only really matters or is relevant early on in the interaction. Once you are already sleeping with the girl, once you've already been with her for a long time, it is a lot harder to be unavailable or be, withhold sexually and have it actually stay positive and good for the interaction. You could do it occasionally, but it would come off as more game playing. It might come across as negative or brooding in that context. However, early on, playing a little bit hard to get, being less needy, being mysterious and aloof, and being a little bit sexually unavailable can be incredibly powerful and can get the girl to chase you super hard. So early on in the interaction, this is one of the more powerful techniques in your arsenal. Next technique I want to talk about is leaving the girl on read. For anyone over 40 or 50, what this basically means is she texts you and you don't text her back right away. You leave some silence, and sometimes you don't even text her back next because when you leave the silence, she actually double texts you, which is actually a great outcome. And this is an absolutely incredibly powerful technique. And in order to understand why it's powerful, just put yourself in the opposite scenario. Remember all the times when you're really into a girl and you text her and she doesn't text you back, and then you obsessively check your phone and look and wonder and worry and think, oh God, was my text awful? Did I lose it? Does she not like me now? Well, the woman is feeling the exact same thing you would be feeling, except 10 times as much, because in general, women are more emotionally reactive in a relationship. And also women are way less accustomed to being left on read, so it stands out even more. So this is an incredibly powerful technique. Obviously, there are limits to it in terms of practicality, because if you are texting a girl, you do eventually have to get her on a date in order for things to progress, right? You cannot sleep with a girl in ones and zeros. You can't have a relationship through lack of contact. So you do have to get her out for plans. But again, sometimes when you leave her on read, she texts you back first, like double texts you, and then there's no pause necessitated and you continue progressing forward. Or sometimes you leave her on read for a bit and then you get back to her as normal, and the fact that there was that gap where she was a little nervous was very, very helpful for you. A great example of this is, let's say you're texting a girl late into the evening, but this is not a time when there's any possibility of meeting up with her that night, nor is that your intention. Well, oftentimes if she texts you, it's a really good idea to just leave it on read and then get back to it in the morning as though you went to sleep or were busy with something else and you just got back to her as normal. But she's sitting up at night wondering, oh, why didn't he text me back? What's going on, etc. When there's nothing to be achieved in the short run by texting now, if there's no difference between texting now and texting 6 hours from now, oftentimes it makes a lot of sense to text in 6 hours instead. Also, if you're traveling and away and you can't make plans anyway, sometimes waiting half a day to text instead of getting back to her right away can create a lot more tension, a lot more of this anticipation, and a lot more of this uncertainty over whether the girl actually has you, over whether you actually like her. So this can be a very powerful technique. This is also a technique that works all the way throughout the relationship. In fact, the deeper the relationship, the more into you she is, the more she expects a response from you, the more it will stand out if you occasionally don't text her back immediately. Now, obviously, there are limits here where not texting back could build trust. Let's say, for example, if you were married and the girl texts you about your child being sick and you wait a day and a half to get back to her, now you're just an irresponsible parent. But in some cases, a little bit of tension, a little bit of not getting back to her can actually do a lot to remind her how much she cares about hearing from you, how much she needs you. So with all that said, this is absolutely S-tier fatal attraction territory and very, very powerful. Do not overuse it. You can get girls really, really obsessed with you with it. And you may not even want them that obsessed. The next technique is being outright insulting or abusive towards a woman, or to a certain extent, neglecting her too early on in the relationship. So a lot of the powerful techniques on this list are sort of akin in a way to a temporary neglect, right? It's temporarily not being at her beck and call, temporarily not being available to her. Now, these only work, the neglectful techniques on this only work if for the most part you are there. For the most part you are a good boyfriend. For the most part you are providing a lot of value in the relationship. The occasional reminder that she can't take you for granted makes her value all the positives you're bringing so much more. If you have yet to bring any positives and you're being neglectful, well, you just come off as a neglectful person and a net negative, and that won't work. And then going to the level of being outright insulting or abusive is just strongly negative and toxic in the wrong way and will deteriorate the relationship or oftentimes instantly end it. And with that said, instantly ending it would obviously be a rejection. So on the tier list, that's where you're gonna fall with this one. It's gonna get you rejected. Please do not do this. Number one, it's not effective, but number two, it's really unhealthy and toxic as well. The next technique I wanna talk to you about is being highly available to the girl. And in a way, this is sort of opposite of some of the techniques we've just discussed. Being around, being at her beck and call, becoming reliable, becoming someone that she leans on a routine basis. This technique does have some amount of merit, but it's not going to get her obsessed with you. It may get her to rely on you in a practical way. It may get her to friend zone you. It may get her to use you for some resource or other asset you can provide, but it is not creating that deep emotional connection. If anything, is getting her bored. And the thing about this that's very insidious is that in a relationship, girls will often ask you to do more things for them. And when you do it, they will appreciate it and show affection towards you. And then they'll ask you to do more, and they'll appreciate it and show affection towards you. And so it may seem as though that thing made the relationship better and stronger. But in fact, if you do too much of it, at a certain point, they start to take you for granted, and then the relationship crumbles. And so as they get more and more and more from him, to a point they get happier. But as they're getting happier, they're also losing some respect for the guy. And then there's a tipping point where they lose respect entirely, and now they no longer want anything from the guy, and then him trying to contribute and do nice things isn't even appreciated anymore. So this is very insidious, and you want to watch out for it. You want to make sure to stand your ground in the relationship and not become a needy pushover, because while it may seem to help in the short run, it is actually going to likely destroy the relationship in the long run. So in terms of tier, this is going to be tier C, she's bored. Next technique I want to talk about, insinuating that sex is not going to happen between you and her, i.e. you may not allow sex to happen between you and her. And if you watched any of my infields, especially mid to late game infields from the first time I'm meeting a girl, you'll know that I do this all the time. It's tons of, you can come up, but you're not staying all night. Or, I can stay for 5 minutes, but you can't keep me all evening. Or we can come up, we can flirt, we can kiss, but nothing serious is going to happen. Or I don't think we should make the sex tonight. So given that I use this all the time, you should probably assume that I think it's a pretty good technique. So it is very powerful, and it is going to get a relatively high tier rating. However, this one only really works early on in the relationship. Once you're already sleeping with the girl on a regular basis, it doesn't really make sense to infer that you no longer are interested in sleeping with her, or it's not going to happen, etc., because that's just part of the relationship. So this is going to become B tier, or she's intrigued, you're getting laid tonight. But it cannot go really higher because it's a technique that really only applies to the first few times you're meeting the girl before sex is an established part of the relationship. So the next technique I want to talk about is creating jealousy and competition between women. And this can be incredibly powerful on a short-term basis and trigger tons of emotions, but it also can be really uncontrollable and actually toxic in certain relationships. So there are pros and cons to it. And I can tell you from experience, there are times when I've done things like invite 2 different girls on a date with me at the same time, and it's been incredibly powerful. But had I invited the 2 girls separately, I would have had a pretty good chance at sleeping with both of them, whereas what happened is one of them left angrily and the other one was very, very attracted. So there is certainly collateral damage and risk associated with that. And the other problem with something like that is it works early on. It works first date. It works once you have a relationship based on just value, but not a lot of comfort yet. Once you build a certain amount of comfort and trust in the relationship, and there's also a lot of value, the extra bump in value will probably destroy so much comfort and trust that it won't really be worth it. So trying to have jealousy in a deep relationship, like creating jealousy in your marriage, is a very, very bad idea. Or creating jealousy with your 6-month girlfriend is probably a very, very bad idea. It can be a useful trigger for getting a girl to like you. It can be an incredibly useful trigger for getting out of the friend zone with a girl that has already a lot of comfort with you but is not seeing you in a high value way. So there are times and places where this can be useful, and when it is useful, it is very, very powerful. But again, it's very tricky and it can go badly wrong very quickly. So due to how strong this is, but due to the fact that it's mainly an early game technique, I'm going to put it in B tier, which is she's intrigued, you're getting laid tonight. But it certainly can't go into the higher tiers because it will tend to destroy more trust than the value it builds. The next technique I want to talk about is being good in bed. And this is something you should just be doing, even aside from it being a technique to get the girl attached to you or obsessed with you or whatever. It's just good in a relationship in general. However, women love good sex. Women will do a lot for good sex. Women will put up with a lot for good sex. Women will come back to a guy who gives them good sex over and over and over again, even when they shouldn't. Sex is huge. Sex is one of the peak emotional experiences for a man, and even more so for a woman. And so yeah, it's incredibly powerful. Quick reminder, I did put out a video recently on how to be good in bed. You can check that out. But one of the big things is that sex is an emotional experience, not just a physical one. So being good at sex doesn't just mean hitting the spots and giving her an orgasm, although that is huge. If you routinely give girls orgasms, they will appreciate it. But it's also all of the lead-in, the foreplay, the meaning that comes from sex. But if you do that well, yes, that will get girls incredibly obsessed with you. And it is incredibly powerful. This is one I could honestly put in either A tier or S tier. It could either be soulmatey or it could be dangerously obsessed. I'm just gonna go and put it in the top tier, but it's not an unhealthy way of doing it for the most part. It's a very strong, powerful technique that is actually pretty positive as well. So it's one of my absolute favorites, and it's one you should definitely do. The next technique I want to talk about is being hot and cold, using push-pull, being unpredictable as to whether you like the girl or don't like the girl. And this is, again, incredibly, incredibly powerful. This is also, again, something that if you watch my infield footage, you watch me flirting with girls, you're gonna see me do it a ton. So obviously, I'm gonna endorse it and say that it's powerful because I use it and I believe that, but also because I have lots and lots of direct evidence that it is. However, again, this is one of those things that only works so far. You can only really imply that you are not interested in the girl at all up to a certain point in the interaction. And then you can only imply that you like a girl a little bit, but not very much, up to another point in the interaction. And then later on, you can only really do occasional push-pulls, and they don't really matter. Like in a deep relationship, it's hard to act like you don't like your girlfriend. So this does have limited utility later in the relationship, or it's not going to be used as overtly or directly later in the relationship or as frequently. So I'm going to put this as a B tier technique simply because it is heavily skewed as an early game technique, but that doesn't mean you can't still flirt and push-pull and be hot and cold a little bit even throughout the relationship, and it doesn't mean it's not powerful at all levels. It's just primarily going to be effective early on in the interaction. Next technique I want to talk about is disqualification. And this is very similar to the last technique. It's essentially a push-pull where you have a positive and a negative spike, except now you just have the negative spike. And weirdly enough, sometimes this can be even more powerful because it's even more jarring, especially with the hotter the girl, the more just having a pure negative or being just thrown off a little bit can be very, very useful. Or just a pure, like, I don't know if we're gonna get along, as opposed to I love you, but I hate you, right? The second being a push-pull, the first being a disqualifier. Sometimes the disqualifier can be stronger, but it's a very similar technique to the push-pull, and therefore I'm gonna put it in the same tier. Incredibly useful, use it. It's underutilized by most men in their game. You should probably be doing more of it. However, it is primarily an early game technique. It's very hard to disqualify a girl you've been sleeping with for the last 6 months who your parents are already in love with. So we're gonna put this as B tier. She's intrigued, you're getting laid tonight. The next technique I wanna go through is walking away or showing a willingness to walk away. And you can look at this as the big boy version of the disqualifier. If the disqualifier is the light version, actually literally walking away is the strong version, or being willing to walk away is the strong version. Also, because it is so strong and because it's not an overt kind of reactive gamey thing, it's more a strong action being taken. This is one that works throughout the entire relationship. I cannot tell you how many times in deep relationships when a girl just crosses a line, the best thing to do and the thing that I've done to salvage the relationship has been to just quietly stand up, go over to the door, start putting on my shoes and walking out the door. And virtually every single time they grab me by the arm, pull me back, plead with me to stay, and the entire dynamic of whatever is going on has shifted dramatically towards something that's more positive for me. And because I'm good-hearted and I like healthy relationships, also good for the relationship. But yes, being willing to walk away is absolutely critical. Even in the deepest relationship you could possibly have, you need to be willing to walk away if the girl changes her behavior. If the girl crosses certain boundaries, you need to be willing to walk away. The second you're not willing to walk away, you are in trouble. Think of it as a negotiation. If you're negotiating something and the other side knew that you were not allowed to leave without a deal being signed, or like it was death to you, like you'd get fired if you didn't sign a deal, they would start pushing on every single point and negotiating and badgering you and giving you the worst possible deal. You would be completely screwed as soon as they realize you can't walk away. You have to keep your walkaway power, otherwise you are screwed. Even in a marriage, even in the deepest relationship you could possibly be in, there is a limit at which walking away would be better than maintaining the marriage. There has to be that limit, otherwise you are screwed. So yeah, S tier. This shit's gold. The next technique I want to talk about shouldn't even really be viewed as a technique so much as something that just happens with a deepening relationship, but it is very, very powerful. And this is becoming more central in the girl's life, having more of what she does on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis and what she values in life wrapped up in you. It could be things like going to the gym together, so that if she were to lose you, she would lose that gym routine and have to establish a new one. Or if you get her eating a certain way, now that's something you do together that's positive in her life, and if she loses you, she would lose that motivation or that partner in her diet. It could also be much bigger things. For example, if she becomes good friends with your circle of friends, now she knows if she were to break up with you, she's breaking up with all of them as well, and she wouldn't want to lose that. Or if she starts to become close with your family, those types of things. Or even further, let's say that you become central in her livelihood in some way, shape, or form, whether you assist her with her business, or she does some work for you and you support her, or she travels with you as her lifestyle. Those types of things are huge things for her to give up. and that makes her more and more attached to you. And this is incredibly powerful from a manipulative standpoint, but it should not be done manipulatively. This is actually just something that's going to happen naturally when you get closer and closer with someone. Usually, if you get into deep relationships where you are married, have kids, you've been together for years, you are going to be symbiotic in some way. You're going to be helping each other both. You'll be helping her and she'll be helping you as well, and making each other's lives better, and that's actually completely healthy. So I'm going to put this strongly in tier A, soulmate territory. It could be used in a negative way if you were to try and be very manipulative with it, like you could go out of your way to get her extra attached to you and stuff like that. But usually this is more healthy than not, and it is very, very powerful. The next technique I want to talk about is creating positive social media, fame at the extreme level, or positive rumors about yourself. This basically is that when the girl's going about her life, other people are saying positive things about you. Other people are reminding her about you. Other people are putting you on a pedestal. And in its extreme form, fame, it can be one of the most obsession-creating things there is. It's a reason why rock stars and actors and athletes have groupies. It's a reason why they have women who barely know them that will sleep with them at the drop of a hat. So it can be incredibly, incredibly powerful. It can be a little bit toxic to an extent, and oftentimes it is superficial. It is more about the image or vision of who someone is, and it may fade, like the effect of it may fade the more someone gets to know you, or it may not. So this is one that we could put either in like a B tier, it's getting her, intrigued and could lead to her sleeping with you, or we'll put it in S tier where she can get really, really dangerously obsessed. Because it can lead to groupie level obsession, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in S tier. But regardless of what tier you put it in, it's something to be well aware of. The more you can create positive social proof, the more you can have other people talking about you well, the more you can have the internet saying good things about you, the more you can have the girl reminded of how awesome you are when you're not around, it all adds up and it all helps. The next technique I wanna talk about is playing hard to get. And this could be defined a lot of different ways, but in my definition I'm gonna use here, playing hard to get assumes that she's trying to get you. Right? So in order to be playing hard to get, that means that she is willing to chase. So basically the idea here is once she's willing to chase a little, you make her work a little bit harder. And once she's willing to chase a little bit more, you make her work a little bit harder. You become just slightly less available. And this doesn't mean you can't be positive. It doesn't mean you can't be interested. It just means you're less interested than she is. One of the things I say for deep relationships is it's okay to be 8 out of 10 or even 9 out of 10 into your girlfriend as long as she is 12 out of 10 into you. As long as she's the one chasing you more than you're chasing her, you can still be very positive towards her. You can still be very sweet to her, kind to her, lovey-dovey with her, all those things. You just have to make sure she's the one chasing you more than you're chasing her. And you have to make sure that occasionally she chases you and doesn't catch you. It's that chasing and not catching that reminds her how much she cares about the chase and how much she cares about you. Like what I'm telling you is this is one of the most powerful techniques in all of game. You absolutely should be using it. Once the girl's willing to chase, get her to chase a little more. The next technique I want to talk about is acting jealous. And this one is absolutely horrible and toxic and will fuck you over so bad. Absolutely do not do it. But I want to make some distinctions so you understand this. First of all, the difference between jealousy and being protective. Because we talked about being protective before and we said that that was somewhat a good thing, right? It was a useful thing. The difference between jealousy and being protective is this. Being protective is taking care of her in a way that she values and desires and where she wants to be protected. Being jealous is finding a problem she doesn't see and doesn't think exists, making it a big problem and imposing on her life in a way she doesn't appreciate. And you can see by the phrasing of that why it is so negative and toxic and not very good. So in general, every time you are jealous, you are going to be lowering your value, because if you are truly secure, if you truly believed you were the best thing for the girl, if you truly believed that she was going to stick with you because of her own free will and choice, you wouldn't need to be jealous. So each and every time you act jealously, you're losing a little bit of value. Now, a funny thing about this is that jealousy occasionally might still be the right thing to do, even though it's a really bad idea. So let's say, for example, taking an extreme case, you go with your girl to a concert and she gets crazy drunk and the rock star on stage is someone she's admired for a very, very long time and she kind of has starry eyes for him. Well, instead of letting her go with the rock star, getting jealous and taking her home and preventing her from doing what she wants to do probably is healthy for the relationship. And before all of you say, oh, if she does that, she's for the streets, I'm talking like she's like actually really drunk and she's like at a place where she's not actually being herself, etc. So it's not like she's just a bad girl, she's just in a bad spot. In any case, if you didn't take the girl home in that situation and keep her protected and be a little bit jealous, the harm to the relationship from her cheating would be worse than the harm from your jealousy. So being jealous in that instance might be merited. But be aware that if that happens over and over again, if every single time you go out with her, you have to be jealous and protect her, number one, now maybe you do have a problem with the girl. Maybe that is a long-term thing and you don't want to be with her. But each and every time you do that, you are losing value. And over a period of time on net, she's just going to have disdain for you and she's not going to want you around. So be aware there are times when jealousy may be merited. I'll give you one more example. Let's say that the girl's ex-boyfriend, who she almost got engaged to and was with for 10 years, is back in town and wants to see her. The risk of having her go see him versus the little bit of animosity that some jealousy might create, it's probably worth creating that jealousy because the risk is very high in that particular case. There's a lot of pent-up emotion there. There's a lot of uncontrollable things that might happen. So it is a situation where jealousy might actually be the right action, but understand you will be losing value in doing it. It will be a negative for the relationship to some degree. The next behavior I want to talk about, being traditionally romantic. In general, this behavior is not going to help you out much. This is the kind of thing that guys do a lot to try and buy a girl's love or to try and like kind of sweet and nice their way into a girl's heart. And typically those type of things don't work. So things like buying the girls a huge bouquet of flowers on the first date, it may even get a positive reception if the girl really, really likes you, but overall it won't help. And here's why. If the girl doesn't like you, it's going to come off as overkill and needy. If the girl does like you, it will probably be positively received and may even help a little bit, but it wasn't necessary. You would have done just fine without it. And so the risk to reward just wasn't worth it. Now, the occasional romantic gesture in an already healthy relationship where you have a ton of value could marginally help the relationship. Or for example, around a major event, like if you are getting married, being a bit romantic around your wedding may actually go a long way. But we're already talking a situation where you are so firmly winning that without the gesture, you would still be completely fine and still doing great. So while romantic gestures can help a little bit in certain cases, and it is nice if you do them properly, in general, the way most guys do them in most cases is losing a ton of value, making you look really needy, making it look like the girl's on a pedestal and that you're a little bit desperate. So for the most part, traditionally romantic gestures simply don't work and are bad. There are exceptions deep into a relationship. There are times when you can get away with it when you have enough value and it actually will be a slight positive. But in general, if you're thinking, is this romantic gesture good or bad? Err very, very strongly on the side of don't do it. For this reason, we're going to put it in either C tier or D tier. It's probably more C tier. It's probably more that you're just boring her, but occasionally it could be grounds for rejection or at least a strong loss of value. So we can put it between C or D tier. I guess we'll put it in C for now. Next technique we want to talk about, sleeping with her best friend or the moral equivalent of it. Basically creating a lot of jealousy and social proof in a way that breaks a ton of trust. In general, this is going to be a really, really awful, terrible idea, and it's very often going to lead to an instant rejection. And I point this out because most of you probably knew that. But as you go through this list, this actually sort of resembles some other techniques on the list a little bit, right? We talked about social proof, boosting your value and building obsession, right? So why isn't the social proof of sleeping with her friend whose opinion she values highly positive for you? Or we talked about jealousy building value in some cases. Well, wouldn't this jealousy build your value? I mean, yes, it would marginally, but it's destroying so much trust, it's not worth it. And this brings me to the idea that I was talking about at the very start of the video, where you should look at this not as a linear continuum, but more almost as a circular continuum, right? So you have S tier, which is getting her dangerously obsessed, and you have D tier, which is leading to a rejection. A lot of the behaviors that can lead to a rejection, an instant rejection, actually are pretty similar to some of the S tier techniques because both of them are creating enormous emotional spikes. And enormous emotional spikes can be very powerful and very unpredictable. They can get huge positive reactions or huge negative reactions. And if you go a little too far with them, it becomes very, very negative. There's actually a comedy routine I really, really like. I heard years and years ago. They're talking about the same sort of phenomenon in like fashion and style and being cool, right? And so the example given was that James Dean, he had this thing like super cool overall, whatever. He had this thing, he had like a matchstick out of the corner of his mouth just being like fucking like cool, whatever, right? And the example given was if he went just one step too far and put another matchstick out the other corner of his mouth, He's gone like cool, hip, and fabulous, looking like a dickhead, right? And you can go around, you're like lame, cool, hip, and fabulous, looking like a dickhead. Here it's like attractive, but kind of boring, really attractive, really interesting, soulmate, loves you, oh God, you're a dickhead, right? Same thing, okay? You can go too far with these techniques. If they're uncalibrated or overused, they're very, very bad. So I think most of you probably know that sleeping with a girl's best friend is a D tier technique, or at least logically you kind of know that even if it seems to make sense in terms of the theory of game, there's something inherently very wrong with it. But I wanted to explain this phenomenon to you, how if you go too far with some of these techniques in an uncalibrated way, it actually takes a very good technique and makes it very, very bad. Next technique I want to talk about is pre-selection or social proof. And this is the phenomenon that when the girl sees that other girls have liked you in the past or like you currently, she's going to get more attracted to you. So for example, if you were in high school and you slept with the hottest girl in school, well, other girls might be interested in you after that relationship or during that relationship because they think that if they sleep with you, they're now as hot as the hottest girl in school. They're now on that level. They gain value by sleeping with you. Or if the girl sees that other girls have slept with you, well, that means you're vouched for. Like social proof has said you are a good decision. And so a lot of the nervousness or insecurity or uncertainty around sleeping with you is relieved by the fact that you are a decision that other women have made before. So this sort of pre-selection social proof is very, very powerful. You can actually create this in short one-off situations. Like for example, in a nightclub, if you're talking to a group of girls and they seem to be your friends, or you bring girls that you know to the nightclub and then you talk to a new girl, she sees you with girls, you automatically have more value because you had girls around. So this is an incredibly powerful technique. However, it only goes so far because it is about tricking the senses in a way. You're basically simulating popularity. You're simulating being very, very in demand. And what being in demand is saying obliquely is that you are a very high value guy. So if you seem very in demand and you start interacting with the girl one-on-one and act really low value, well, you have undermined what you created with the social proof. So the actual direct information the girl gets from interacting with you will overwhelm and become more important than whatever pre-selection she had or that you demonstrated early on. So pre-selection is great up to the point that you're really interacting with the girl. Once you're actually interacting with the girl, it becomes way less powerful because she has direct evidence to compare it to. So for this reason, while pre-selection is very, very powerful early on, I'm still going to put it as B tier because it is an early game technique. It's not a technique that is going to carry you through deep into the relationship if you don't already have a lot of other positives. If you have a lot of other positives going for you, if the girl just loves you inherently, then having some pre-selection could help you. But you also have to be careful because it might create more jealousy, again, more negative lack of comfort than what you're creating in terms of additional value. So even there, it is kind of problematic. So we're going to put this one as a very strong technique, but B tier. She's intrigued, you're getting laid tonight, but be careful using it long term. Next technique I want to talk about is creating shared stories and memories with a girl. And this is incredibly powerful. This is incredibly useful. This is the kind of stuff that does build relationships. In fact, it's so strong that in my system model of game, there is actually a phase for it. I call it narrative. It is the story of you and her together, building those mutual stories. For example, we all know those couples that love telling the story of how they met, or they love telling the little quirky things that make them so perfect for each other. This is what we're talking about with narrative. Or for example, going on vacation with a girl, especially to some place where she has an amazing experience, she's never been there, it was life-changing for her, well, she's gonna associate that vacation with you for the rest of her life, and she's always gonna feel that feeling of attachment for you, even after you break up, if you ever do. So this is incredibly, incredibly powerful. It's also incredibly positive and wholesome as compared to a lot of techniques. So this technique that, again, I call narrative is incredibly powerful. It's something you should be looking to create in any kind of relationship that you want to be strong long-term. If you want a serious long-term relationship, if you want deep connection with a girl, definitely think about adding as much narrative as possible. Strongly A tier. It almost could be S tier, but it's not of the nature of those like really instant spiky techniques that a lot of the S tier ones are. So we'll leave it as strong A tier for now. But yeah, if you want strong relationships, if you want the girl to think you're soulmates, then it goes in soulmate tier, A tier, narrative. So that is a ton of techniques that men attempt to use to create chasing and obsession. Some of them work really well, some of them don't. Hopefully I've given you a good understanding of how effective they are and which ones to use. Hopefully also I've emphasized to you that you want to use these for good and not for evil, and that these techniques can be dangerous if used wrong. They can create toxic relationships, they can get girls way too into you, they can make girls like you for the wrong reasons, all of those types of things. Also, remember that model I said where if you go too far with a good thing, it becomes a very bad thing. It is kind of a circular model. If you go too far with just creating value for value's sake or obsession for obsession's sake, you will actually destroy comfort and you will do net harm to the relationship through that as well. And you may even lead to getting instantly broken up with from something that was very close to something that could have worked. Even if you use them relatively sparingly, it's important to understand these phenomena because they will come up over and over again in life. You will see these in your relationships. So yeah, use them wisely and definitely, above all, understand them. If you understand these techniques, you understand a lot about female psychology. So hopefully you understood the video. I'd love to hear your comments below, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.